Hi everyone, hope you are doing well. So in this video we will see how we can use list in Jetpack Compose. So if you have used recycler view in view-based component, so list is something similar. So we have three categories. First one will be horizontal or vertical list, second will be grid, and third will be staggered. So basically horizontal means when we want to display something on a row, and vertical means when we want to display something on a column. And similar way we can use grid. So grid contain both row and column. And again we have a two use case under grid. The grid can be horizontally scrollable or grid can be vertically scrollable. There is one more category, staggered. So staggered is something similar to grid. Only difference is the item size is depend upon the content size. Let's say we have this image. So if you see its height is less in compared to this content. Similar way, this image has a less height in compared to this image. So now we have the basic idea, like on the basis of the content, which list we need to use. Either we need to use horizontal list, vertical list, grid, or staggered. Okay. Now let's go to the code and see how we can use it. Okay. Now first we will create one composable function here. Just name it horizontal list, horizontal. So if you want to create a horizontal list, then we need to use lazy row. Okay. As the name suggests, horizontal means we want to place the item in a row, so we have a lazy row. Similar way for vertical we have a lazy column. Okay, now we will remove this attribute and we will use this lazy list scope. So if you have used a recycler view, then you know, like we need to pass a list of items which will be displayed on the screen. So similar way we need to create a list of items. Okay, so I will first create a one class which will keep the data for that particular item. So I can call it data class user. Okay. Now this user class have a ID, user ID, username, and let's say well user image. Okay. Now we need to create a list. For this demo purpose, we are creating a list within the composer block. But for practical use case, we need to provide this list from a view model. So I will say well user list is equal to mutable list of, and this will be a list of user, and here I will add some element. Say add the first item will be user, its ID will be 1. Let's give it a name of say Sachin. Now for user image we can pass a drawable like icons dot outline dot. Now the person is a image vector, maybe we can pass image vector here. Okay, just add more element to this list. Okay, now here we will pass a ID of 2, this will be 3, this will be 4. Okay, let's keep the image as the same. Okay, now we have this list. So to avoid of recreation, we will just move it inside a remember block. Okay, so whenever we keep it in a remember block, whenever the decomposition happen, this list will not recreate it. Okay, so there are three type of function which we can use. First one is where we can define a count and key and the content. Second will be list, key and content. So we will use this function items, and items is equal to user list, then key, and finally content. Okay, so this part is important. We need to define a unique key for each items. So this will improve compose framework for performance and other effects. Okay, so For our model, we have a key as user ID. So you can get the current object with the help of it, and here you can pass user ID. Okay. Now we will create items here. So we will say user item. Now in the user item, we will pass the object. Okay. Now just create a function. Okay. Now for this user item, we need to display the user image and its name. So first we will create a row. Okay. Now in the row, first we will use icon to display user image. Just rename this one to user and call it user dot user image. For content description, we will use user dot name. Now we need to display text. Now in the text, we need to display user dot username. Okay. Now we will just add a preview block to see how this list look like. So we will add preview, composable, function, preview of horizontal list. Now from here, we will just call that function. Okay. Now if you see, our contents are visible. Okay. So in the preview block, we can use some other attributes like so background. So background equals to true. Okay. Now if you see, these content have no proper spacing and padding part. Okay. Now we will see how we can add padding and spacing to this element. Now just go to this lazy row. So the padding will be from the content top, left, right, and bottom. Okay, so we will use content padding here, and here we need to use padding value. So just pass padding value, and we will say the spacing will be 16 dp. So now you can see we have left padding, top padding, bottom padding. As this content is scrollable, so for the last item, it will have the right padding also. Okay. Now let's say you want to give spaces between these items. Okay. So for spacing, we need to use horizontal arrangement, and we will say arrangement dot space by. Okay. Now I will say it will have a spacing of 16 dp. Okay. Now you can see we have a content spacing between these elements. Okay. So this way we will adjust the content spacing. Now again we will go to this user items. So if you see here, we require some spacing between user image and user name. So for this text, we will add a modifier. Modifier dot padding, and we will give a start padding of 8 dp. Okay, now we have proper spacing between these elements. Now let's see how it look like on device. So just go to this preview block and click on this and just say run. Okay, now you can see we have this element and we are able to scroll the list. Okay, so now in this lazy list scope, we can even add individual items also. So to add an individual item, just use item attribute. Okay. For this, let's say we say text list, and at the last, if you want to any item text for match on 23rd Jan 2024. Okay. So you can see at the last this text got added. Now let's see how we can use a horizontal grid. So to create a horizontal grid, just use lazy horizontal grid. Okay. Now first parameter is we need to define its row, like how its row will be displayed. So if you see here, we need to use grid cells. So we use grid cells dot. So there are three categories, like either it can be adaptive, it can be fixed or fixed size. So we will say fixed. Now in the parameter, we will define, let's say we want to display three elements. Okay, now again for contents, we just remove this code, go to this block. So we will use items is equal to user list, key will be same, dot user id, then we want to add a content. Now for the content, we will just copy this code and paste it here. So if you see, we keep this element without any container. So default will be box layout. That's why they overlap with each others. We can just add a column here. Okay, now in this column, we have this lazy row and we have this lazy grid. Okay, so we have defined a fix. That's why it is taking this space. Now let's say we want to reduce this space. So we will use adaptive. Now in the adaptive, we need to define the minimum size. We say minimum size will be 40 dp. Okay, so now you can see we have this content dash. So now its height got reduced. So we can even use fixed size. Use fixed size, and it will be 40 dp. So now let's say we want to give some spacing and other things. We will use the same here. Content padding is equal to padding value, and it will be 16 dp. Next will be horizontal arrangement, and arrangement dot space by 16 dot dp. Okay, so this way we can create a horizontal grid. Now let's say you want to change the view type based on some condition. Let's say for this team, Rohit is captain, so we want to add some label here, or maybe we can need to pass a different UI. So we can do the same here as well. Let's say we can add a condition if it dot user ID is equal to. Now we can check the user ID for Rohit. So Rohit, the user ID is 5. So we will see if ID is 5, then display captain item, otherwise display user item. Okay, I will just create one function for captain item. We just simply use this layout, and so we can add a badge here, badge. Now in the badge you can add a text, say see captain. We are getting some errors, but this is an experimental API, so we just add the annotation of experimental. Okay, now we have this captain item, and here we have user item. Okay, now we can just verify how it look like on device. So if you see now for Rohit, we can see this captain badge. Okay, so this way we can create a different type of view type. Now let's say whenever you scroll to this element, okay, and you want to move to any specific position. So we can do that part with the help of state. So this list contain a default state. So we will gonna use a default state here. Well, say list state is equal to. So if you see here, we have different list state. For row and column, we will use remember lazy list state, and for grid, we will use this one, and for staggered, we will use this one. Okay, so we'll see a use case for list only. Remember lazy list state, and we will pass this state to our lazy row. State is equal to list state. Now let's say you want to move a list to a starting position. Okay, what we can do, if I click on this last item, okay, so then I need to move to the first position. So here we can add a click. Whenever I click on the last element, the list scroll to the beginning. So we will add a click listener for text. So by default, click property is not available on text. So if you want to use a click, either we can change it to button, or we can use with the help of modifier. So we will use modifier here. Modifier is equal to modifier dot click. Okay, now this is a clickable block. Now here we can use on click. We can remove this one, and we have defined on click. Now in the on click, what we need to do, we need to use list state dot scroll to item, or we can use animate scroll to. So we will use scroll to item, and here we will define 0. So again, if you see, this is again a suspend function. So we will create a scope here. Well, remember scope is equal to remember coding scope. Now on this scope, we'll use scroll to item. Okay. Now let's see this on device. Okay. Now I will go to last. Okay. Now I click on this element. Now you can see we have reached to the starting element. Okay. So this way we can use scroll. Now let's see how we can use staggered horizontal grid. We can use here lazy horizontal staggered grid. Now here first we need to define our rows. Okay, so for rows we need to define staggered grid cells. Dot. So same we can use adaptive fixed or fixed size. We will use adaptive. Default will be 40. And next we will define a content. So again same we can do, just copy this code, paste it here, and just remove this view type from here and just use user item for now. Now let's compare this staggered grid with a horizontal grid. Just copy this attribute from here to this one, and here it should not be horizontal arrangement, and we have horizontal item spacing. Dot dp, and its height will be 120 dp. Same for this one. And we need to make row size as fixed. Here we need to pass 3. Now let's see. We have this proper spacing between these elements, and these elements are aligned correctly. Now if you see in case of staggered, the elements are not aligned on a same line. So this is the difference between our staggered and a grid layout. Okay, so that much for this video. In the next video, we will see how we can create a vertical list, vertical grid, and vertical staggered grid. So stay tuned for further updates.